Burkina Faso is a reference, and we must maintain the flame very high. Today, after this, we will inaugurate the cement factory, which is another factory in Burkina Faso. But the hope is to be able to discuss with all the cement factories in the coming days to see how to lower the price of cement too. We think there are better possibilities. We have limestone in Burkina Faso and clay. If we manage to exploit them efficiently and discuss with one or two cement producers, we must be able to exploit them to lower the price of cement. We will discuss with all of them to see what is possible.
Have you ever heard a town breathe its last? Where you stand in a silent street, wind blowing dust over broken doorways, and you swear the cracked walls are whispering ghost stories? That was the reality across swaths of Burkina Faso until a soldier named Ibrahim Traoré decided enough was enough. What if I told you that some of these ghost towns didn't just survive, they're now bursting with small factories, training centers, humming trucks, and children running to reopened schools? And not thanks to billion-dollar Western aid or towering multinational plants, but through a gritty, homegrown push that's startling both friends and rivals. This is proof. Just 3 years ago, many places in Burkina Faso looked like the final scene of a sad movie. Picture Yako, Kaya, or even pockets near Fada and Gourma markets overrun by weeds, schools with doors swinging in the wind, blackboards layered in dust thicker than old carpet. The only new businesses were often local transporters carting families out, not in. It wasn't always this way. Older residents like Mamadou, who still wear his grandfather's woven hat, remember when trade caravans once bustled through these streets.
We had sellers from Mali, Niger, sometimes even far as Ghana. Groundnuts, hides, woven cloth, spices, laughter fills the square every morning.
But then came wave of challenges. Extremist raids, climate shocks, collapsing local prices under imported goods, all made worse by a regional economy still tied up in old colonial-style trade deals. Families fled, businesses folded. Entire townships seemed to exhale their last breath. So, when Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a young, blunt-spoken military man, took power promising a radical shakeup, few believed he could change this deeper rot. Another strongman with slogans, people thought. Another chapter in the same old cycle. But something different happened. Instead of launching grand, flashy mega-projects tied to foreign banks or chasing headlines with massive foreign-funded infrastructure, Traoré pushed for a dense patchwork of local initiatives. Dozens, then hundreds, of modest industrial projects anchored in old ghost towns, built by local hands for local needs. He challenged communities to organize into cooperatives, promising them direct tax breaks and startup grants if they'd risk bringing life back to these dead places. And it worked, little by little. Take Yako, once a town mother wept to leave. Where hollow-eyed kids once played with rusted tin cans in abandoned courtyards, today you'll hear the rhythmic thump of looms from a small textile mill, powered partly by solar panels that glint over sun-baked roofs. Inside, rows of young women stitch Faso Danfani cloth into elegant shirts and dresses. Local merchants, who used to buy cheap imports from Togo or China, now proudly stock made-in-Burkina racks. Nearby, a cassava processing plant hums as local farmers line up with carts stacked high. Even the market, for years a testing ground for goats, buzzes again. And here's Safia too. 3 years ago, she was living under a ripped tarp on the outskirts of Ouagadougou, roasting ground nuts by the roadside to feed her 3 kids. Today, she wears a bright head wrap as she stands by a conveyor line in Yako's mill, guiding finished bolts of cloth onto wooden crates.
"I never thought we would come home," she says simply. "The town was dying. My father's grave is here, but I thought we'd never return. Now my children run into school smiling. They are learning in the same classrooms I once sat in. It's like we all woke up from a nightmare."
None of this is perfect or a slick advertisement. The factories are small, equipment is often secondhand, and the roads are still pitted. But every week brings another cooperative trying something new. A tomato drying shed in Tenkodogo, a hand tool forge in Kudugu, a small bottling plant in Manga. Crucially, the ownership is local. Instead of profits siphoning out to distant headquarters, they circulate through neighborhood banks, local shopkeepers, and newly trained repairmen. Schools are rehiring teachers. Clinics that sat abandoned are reopening, even with bare cupboards, simply because patients have returned. And while this might seem like a quiet local miracle, It's shaking up bigger tables. Because Burkina Faso is doing it largely without the old ECOWAS economic engines or Western loan oversight. Instead of waiting for more IMF programs that come with long strings, they're experimenting with regional barter, local saving circles, and direct deals, sometimes with new partners outside West Africa altogether. A quiet fury is brewing in some foreign embassies.
They're writing their own playbook, admitted one anonymous European trade attaché recently. If it works, it could inspire other nations stuck under the same debt-heavy trade models. That's frankly uncomfortable.
When towns rise from the grave, it's more than an economic chart. It means children who would have risked drowning in the Mediterranean might instead grow up learning trades that keep them home. It means families who once huddled in refugee camps can visit grandmothers on weekends. It means local stories and songs don't vanish into dust. That is the quiet revolution happening in Burkina Faso's once ghost towns. A country rewriting its fate, one modest plant, one small cooperative, one cautious returning family at a time. But how exactly is all this funded, without plunging Burkina Faso into the same heavy foreign debts that crippled past dreams? What clever backroom strategies is Traore using, and why are certain Western diplomats whispering about economic defiance? We'll explore that, and the hidden trade deals stirring up old power balances. But first, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Can small, locally owned industry really transform a whole nation's destiny? Or is it just fragile hope in a tough world? Drop your comments below. And if these new African stories matter to you, please like this video, subscribe, and share it so more people can see what's truly unfolding.
On May 31st, 2025, Burkina Faso took yet another bold step towards transforming its future. Here in Ouagadougou, I think everyone who goes around the city center already sees the very beneficial developments. In Ouagadougou, the Prime Minister and members of the government joined forces with local communities to manufacture and lay paving stones, contributing their own labor to the presidential initiative known as Faso Mebo. I think that this morning, the members of the government chose to come here to the Faso Mebo sites. Firstly to Zenda High School, where paving stones are produced, but also because it's truly the production center for everything necessary for carrying out these works on the ground.
It's one thing to hear that dusty ghost towns are now bustling with small factories and humming workshops, but there's a question echoing from conference rooms in Abuja to policy think tanks in Paris. Where is Burkina Faso getting the money to pull this off? This is a country that, just a handful of years ago, was limping under external debts, struggling with a fragile security map, and begging for foreign investment. How could such a nation suddenly fund hundreds of micro-industrial ventures, train thousands of local workers, and keep its head above water? The answer is what makes this story even more disruptive. Because Traore's Burkina Faso is essentially rewriting the playbook on how to grow without the heavy chains of foreign loans, and doing it in a way that's quietly unsettling the old power brokers. Let's start at the ground level. In small towns like Kongusi and Garango, villagers long relied on tontines, traditional rotating savings groups. Women would meet under mango trees, pool tiny sums, and each month one member took home the pot to start a venture or pay school fees. Under Traore's administration, these age-old methods didn't just continue, they were scaled up. Local leaders formed community development banks, essentially super-sized tontines mixed with modern microfinance. Farmers, weavers, even local tailors contributed small percentages of their earnings, pooling thousands of dollars at a time. The state sweetened it by matching funds or providing low-interest seed capital, but on one condition: the money stayed in the community, funding things like cassava grinders, soap workshops, or metal tool sheds. Profits were divided, debts paid back, and then the circle grew. But that alone doesn't explain the solar panels twinkling on rooftops or the surprisingly modern textile looms. Here's where Burkina Faso started breaking old molds, by cutting direct barter deals. While the West watches nervously, Ouagadougou has been quietly signing agreements with countries like Russia and Turkey. Instead of hard currency loans that would need to be paid back with interest, they've offered raw materials or mining access in exchange for finished goods and tech training. A little gold here, a cluster of cashew orchards there, swapped directly for machinery to start a small assembly plant, or contracts to train local mechanics on maintaining industrial equipment. No middlemen banks siphoning fees, no currency devaluation traps.
A European trade analyst recently grumbled in a leaked memo. They're bypassing our financial leverage. If this becomes a template, the entire West African debt structure could erode.
And that's the unspoken truth. For decades, West Africa, like much of the continent, was kept in line through economic instruments. Want roads or factories? Get an IMF line of credit? Miss a payment? Accept higher interest rates? Open your markets wide to imports that undercut your farmers. Sign stability pacts that benefit external investors. Burkina Faso under Traore is poking holes in that. By taking some short-term barter hits, they're sidestepping the long repayment schedules that often swallow generations. In the short run, it means giving up slices of gold or manganese, but in exchange they're gaining local capacity, machine shops, welding schools, processing know-how that stays behind even after the barter goods are long gone. Look at Dori, which was once little more than a dusty cattle stopover. Through a combination of local pooled funds and a small barter contract with a Turkish agri-group, they established a regional dairy cluster. Now, local herders no longer sell raw milk at rock-bottom prices to trucks that haul it hundreds of kilometers away. Instead, they sell to a local pasteurization plant. Women's groups bottle yogurt and cheese in simple hygienic facilities, and young delivery boys zip around town on motorbikes selling to shops. A share of profits goes back into the community bank. Herds are healthier because small vet stations have sprung up, funded by the plant's modest taxes. It's a modest ecosystem, but one that keeps growing, owned by Burkinabe hands. The ripple effects are starting to reach beyond dusty roads and village banks. Some local merchants in Ouagadougou are quietly reporting better profit margins because they can now stock local processed goods rather than costly imports. Families report more children in school because parents no longer must migrate seasonally just to find work. And in the halls of certain embassies, there's rising discomfort. They're teaching their people to survive without us, a diplomat overheard muttering after a discreet economic forum. That may be hyperbole. Burkina Faso still trades widely, but it captures the unease. Because every new local brick factory, every micro-steel workshop, means one less lever to pull through currency manipulation or trade dependency. None of this means Burkina Faso's path is smooth. Security challenges remain. Some village cooperative funds have been mismanaged. A few barter contracts ended up lopsided with more gold shipped than tractors received. Even local critics warn of creeping corruption. There are already rumors of officials in Bobo Dioulasso living a bit too large off industrial taxes. And Western lenders, seeing influence slip, have begun quietly pressuring regional partners to tighten their policies, hoping to rope Burkina Faso back into familiar debt frameworks. But for now, there's a cautious pride in the air. Ask Adama, a young welder in Kaya's newly rebuilt market, what it means. He pauses, wipes sweat from his brow, then says,
My grandfather died poor, making tools for traders who shipped them away. I'm making tools now, but they are here. That feels different. That feels like ours.
We'll explore how this quiet economic revolution is changing Burkina Faso's social fabric. From apprentices learning trades once reserved for elites to small towns becoming magnets for regional migrants. We'll also dig into whether Traore's bold experiment can really survive the storms ahead, or if powerful forces will find a way to break it. But before we get there, what's your take on this new economic strategy? Does Burkina Faso's local-first, barter-backed model sound like a sustainable path? Or a fragile gamble in a global economy that's rarely kind to small players? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and share this story so more people see what's really happening beyond the headlines.
The Faso-Mebo initiative means the Faso is being built in the local Moor and Diola languages. It is a presidential initiative adopted by the Council of Ministers in October last year to improve the country's roads and the citizens' living environment by mobilizing citizens and using local resources. Some are donating building materials.
We are delighted to make this donation to Faso-Mebo to show our commitment and to show our citizenship, to show our patriotism. And we said to ourselves that we must come and do something to show that in unity, it is in cohesion that we will be able to build Burkina Faso.
Others are volunteering their time and labor.
We decided voluntarily to come and work to show patriotism. We were also able to donate cement and other materials needed for the work.
If you stand on the main street of Kaya just after sunrise, you'll see a sight that would have been almost unthinkable 5 years ago. Young men in grease-stained overalls pedal to newly built garages. Teenage girls in neat smocks walk briskly toward a local lab that tests milk quality. Even older farmers, once resigned to selling raw crops at hopeless prices, line up at small processing depots to weigh sacks of ground nuts that'll be turned into oil right there in town. The town hums with a quiet urgency, a new heartbeat where there was once a ghostly hush. One of the most dramatic shifts happening in Burkina Faso's once deserted towns is inside young minds. For decades, the dream of youth was singular: leave. Go to Ouagadougou, or if you're daring, find a smuggler's route north through Niger or Libya, risking desert heat, border guards, and capsizing on the Mediterranean. Anything to flee the suffocation of dead economies. But today, more young people see another path. Local workshops offer apprenticeships. Small assembly lines need electricians. Dairy clusters hire lab assistants. Welding schools spring up near solar installation yards. In Yako, a vocational center partners with the modest new textile mill to teach machine maintenance, so the next mechanical glitch doesn't require flying in an expensive foreign technician. Meet Alassane, 19, who once scraped off selling bottled water to truck drivers.
My friends used to talk only about getting to Europe. That was a dream. Now we joke about opening our own machine shop one day. It's not easy. Money's still tight. But at least there's something real to build here.
That might be Traore's quietest revolution, replacing desperate escape with local ambition. This transformation isn't only about young men with tool belts. In fact, some of the biggest shifts are happening among women. Across these small industrial hubs, women's cooperatives run everything from fruit drying sheds to hand lotion bottling lines. In Garang, a cluster of soap workshops sprang up after a barter shipment brought in semi-automated molds and mixing vats from Turkey, traded for cashew harvest futures. Today, dozens of women who once sat for hours pounding shea by hand operate these stations. They earn more, work shorter hours, and send their daughters to school instead of into the fields. Fatimata, who manages one such cooperative, laughs when asked if she ever imagined running a business.
We used to just wait for men to bring home money. Now men wait for us to hire them. That changes everything.
But while there's growing local dignity, it's fragile. Security is always a looming shadow. Extremist cells still operate in pockets of the north, sometimes targeting these very new industries because they represent stability, and a government they oppose. In places like Dori and Djibo, small factories often double as community forts. Owners have arranged for local patrols, mixing young employees with former militia to guard facilities at night. They're not trained soldiers. They're welders, dairy workers, mill hands, who shoulder old hunting rifles after shifts. It's an uneasy peace, but for many it's better than helplessness. There's also internal skepticism. Some Burkina Faso economists worry that these barter deals, while dodging interest payments, could over time drain vital resources.
Gold doesn't regrow, one warns. We have to make sure these deals genuinely build something lasting.
Meanwhile, ECOWAS is nervously watching. Several member states struggling under heavy IMF repayment schedules are sending quiet delegations to Ouagadougou to study Burkina Faso's community financing and barter swap model. Could they do the same? Trade local minerals for small industrial toolkits, or structure massive pooled tontine banks instead of relying on costly external credit? Not everyone is thrilled. Some West African banks tied closely to European interests are pushing back, tightening certain lines of credit in hopes of pressuring the Burkinabe model to stumble. A leaked internal ECOWAS report admitted, should this model succeed and replicate, it risks undermining established regional trade frameworks reliant on controlled capital flows. In simpler terms, if Burkina Faso shows you can break out of old debt-heavy systems and still grow, who else might try? But beyond geopolitics and bankers' spreadsheets, the biggest test might simply be time. Can these new micro-industries survive a couple of bad harvests? Will local youth keep training if big migration brokers start offering tempting smuggler routes again? Can women keep controlling cooperatives if older power structures try to muscle back in? Traore himself seems aware. In a speech inaugurating a new agri-processing center in Bobo Dioulasso, he didn't crow about success. Instead, he warned locals, "This is your chance. If we lose this to corruption, or if we stop working together, the world will not come to save us. It is us or nothing." So what does all this mean? Is Burkina Faso writing a new chapter not just for itself, but perhaps for other overlooked nations long trapped in dependency and debt? Or is this a fragile dream already drawing the cold attention of bigger powers who might find subtle ways to squeeze it back into old patterns? Only time, and the stubborn will of communities like Yako, Dori, and Garango, will tell. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Could this local-first, barter-driven, small industry surge truly reshape Burkina Faso's destiny? Maybe even light a path for other nations weighed down by old debts and outside demands? Or do you worry that it's too delicate to last? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe now.